It made me think for a minute in terms of how correct that was in terms of how we tend to put things in one bucket or the other as if they're not a set of options in terms of the way we can see things. Our reptilian mind does a bunch of different things, and one of the things it does is it wants achievement, and many of us cannot get off the achievement wheel. Eventually the tree falls, but not again in the first days, not in the first week, not even in the first month or the first several months. It took some time, but he understood the principle that consistency would pay off. This is James Rosseau, aka Trig, and let me welcome you to the Core Link Solutions Show. Family, welcome back to another episode of the Core Link Solution, where my goal is to empower you with awareness and actionable insights. Man, this is part of a journey we've been on lately called the Success on Your Own Terms journey. It's not totally new, but it's something I really felt deep inside that we needed to embark on. And if you're just joining, we've been through 3 episodes so far. They're all available to you, of course, on the podcast, wherever you choose to receive your podcast. But please dive in, because today we are going to talk about why consistent progress beats chasing perfection. Why consistent progress beats chasing perfection. You know, one of the stories I told the other day that I shared on social was a story I saw John Maxwell tell probably 10 years ago or so. And it's such a profound story. It's a guy who comes home every day from work, comes in the house, changes his clothes, goes back to the kitchen, picks up this axe and opens the door, walks out the back door, walks to a tree and takes 5 chops at the tree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Goes back in the house, puts down the axe, changes his clothes, sits down, has dinner, enjoys the rest of his evening. The next day, he does the same exact thing. Comes home, walks to the kitchen, changes clothes, picks up the axe, walks out the back door, down the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chops in the same spot on the tree. He does not look for the tree to fall. He does this day after day, consistently as a part of a routine. And eventually the tree falls, but not again in the first days, not in the first week, not even in the first month or the first several months. It took some time, but he understood the principle that consistency would pay off, family. So with that, let's jump into today's topic. You know, one of the things you can do when you talk about performing to progress versus perfection is start with the mindset shift. There's clearly a mindset shift you need to embrace to know that perfection and completion are not going to be achieved right out of the gates. They're just not going to be achieved right out of the gates. And, you know, one thing about perfection is not only is it fleeting, it is almost impossible despite what you may see on social media. One of the interesting things about social media is people's natural tendencies, and I think that's true for many of us, is to show the victory lap, to show when you have achieved the thing. However, we're not as inclined, or maybe it just doesn't feel as natural, to track all the things happening up to that point, the planning for it, the preparation for it, the training for it, the point of exhaustion and potential failure throughout the progress of getting there. What we tend to show is when we meet the moment and the celebratory things that happen around meeting the moment. And so we need to back up and think about all the things that have to happen to get there and understand that what you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg and not what's underneath the water. And so if you can embrace that fact and start there, then you can easily shift into, well, then what are some of the things I need to do to really get to the success I want? And how do I adopt again a mindset of progressing versus trying to reach this point of perfection? And so today I'm going to walk you through 6 core things you can do. 6 core things you can do. And before I even go to the 6 core things, I love this context somebody gave me one time. I was working in an organization, and he said, you know, in baseball, if you bat a .300 average, you are considered excellent. You're considered great. I mean, just think about a .30. So you hit the ball 30% of the times up at bat. You are considered great in baseball. He said, you know, inside this company, you could do a .70, .80, and we will still say you suck. So just think about that, just culturally. And this was a large firm I'm talking about. This is not a neighborhood store. Not that that should be any different, but I say it's a large firm because there were hundreds, well over 100,000 people working at this firm, and that was the culture. And that was what you will receive inside of the culture of that large institution. So think about that. Most of us who've grown up in different places have gotten very used to a similar reaction. That point 7, point 8 is not meeting the mark. And to a certain degree, it's understandable in terms of, well, we need to complete what we said we would complete. But at the same time, it shouldn't be. It sucks. Progress should be recognized. Give some thought to Philippians 1:6. God finishes what he starts. If you can believe that, then you also can rest assured that as you're doing different things and moving towards the mark, that it's not you alone, that God is moving with you. That should give you a different sense of comfort. That should give you a different sense of peace, the ability to put down the axe after the five chops, per se, and know that you will pick it up tomorrow and God will be with you as you continue to do this routine day after day and being consistent. So, one of the things I would ask you to do, just challenge yourself. And again, moving back from the need, the desire, the temptation, if you will, to chase perfection. It's just think about one small step you can take today. One small step you can take today to move towards the goal you are pursuing. What's one small thing? Write it down. If you want to become a marathon athlete, is it running a mile today and running 2 miles next week, etc.? And each of those things being milestones that you can see, appreciate, and know are contributing to the long term goal. Can you do that as a shift in your habit in order to get to your goals? I think you can. Oh, I know you. Not I think you can. I know you can. One of the challenges with the mindset shift of moving from a perfection mindset to a progress mindset is not only the things that we see that make us want to chase it. Some of it is just also some of the almost, I want to call them binary habits we fall into. I was on the phone with someone this week and they asked me a very interesting question. We were talking about just how we make decisions sometimes or how we categorize things. And he said, if I say black, what do you naturally say as the opposite option? I said white. He said, if I say tall, what do you say? I said short. He said, if I say fat, what do you say? I said, skinny. If I say success, what do you say? I said failure. He said, now that is a two option set that most of us tend to fall into. It has to be one or the other. What happens when there's a three option set? And there was a proper name he had for it, but I just can't remember that right now. What happens when there's a three option set? You say if you say black, you could say, well, white or red, or you could say not black is an option. So it could be black, it could be white, it could just but be not black. If you say fat, it could be skinny, but it could be just not fat or skinny. So then when you say success, it could be not success or failure. Another word for not success, though, is progress. And when he said that, it was like, It made me think for a minute in terms of how correct that was in terms of how we tend to put things in one bucket or the other as if they're not a set of options in terms of the way we can see things. And again, the brain is an interesting thing. It wants context. It wants a reference, a frame reference to put things in because it helps you make so many decisions easily and rapidly because we make so many decisions each and every day. But this is one it's worth zooming out and considering because as you do the work, particularly as you do the work in a Colossians 3:23 mindset of work heartily as unto the Lord, what you don't want to do is discard the value of the work. And if you're pursuing perfection with an eye on just getting the goal, and that is the only thing that matters, in the work in and of itself and the progress towards that thing does not matter. That's exactly what you're doing, discarding the value of it. And so we certainly don't want to do that. So as you again try to make this shift and put progress over perfection, meaning more important than, more valuable than, contributing to, that's something to keep in mind that you have options in terms of how you think about what you do and the value you associate with it. Let me ask you this question as we wrap up today's discussion on progress over perfection. What are you willing to do in terms of 2 to 3 steps over the next week to make progress? I asked you earlier about one step. I'm going to raise that to 2 to 3 steps. What are you willing to do over the next week to make progress? And are you willing to give yourself a pat on the back for that progress? Are you willing to say, yes, that is valuable, that makes sense, that is contributing towards, and I'm not going to be discouraged, I'm not going to discard it, but I'm going to give myself recognition for making the progress? Are you willing to do that over the next week or so? I believe you are. I believe you are, but I want you to write down what those things are so you can check them off. I was listening to someone else talk about this, and our reptilian mind does a bunch of different things. And one of the things it does is it wants achievement. And many of us cannot get off the achievement wheel, if you will. I know I can't. I struggle with it. I'm still struggling with achievement as a thing that can be a driver, but also can be a dissatisfier, right? One of the songs I love so much that just came to mind when I said that was Triply and Satisfaction, that the Lord is our ultimate satisfaction. But at the same time, we can have other things that, let's call them mini satisfiers, and achievement can be one of those things. Well, make sure you set yourself up to have achievement milestones. And by noting 2 or 3 things you must do to get towards that longer goal, you give yourself the opportunity to see progress points as achievement. And I really, really encourage you to do that. When I was going back to school for my undergrad at night, um, I couldn't help initially but see all of the credits I needed to get before I would graduate. Good Lord. I just said, man, I can't believe. Yeah, I have so much, I can only see the years ahead of me. And then I started to say, well, actually, each course completed is an achievement. And I'll be honest with you, a year or so ago, was it last year, 2024? I went to Berkeley for some music management stuff, and I even ratcheted it down to each week. I'm sorry, I got to a point where each paper for me was an achievement. Each paper, the score, whatever, because I needed to have interim moments of small, yes, small celebrations, if you will. And I think it's healthy. It was healthy for me. I would encourage you to give that a shot so you don't see not reaching that big Uber goal today as a disappointment, as a dissatisfier. And oh my God, absolutely not as a failure, family. Let's keep rolling on this journey. Again, if you've been tracking with me over the past couple of weeks, this is called the Success in Your Own Terms journey. I encourage you to be a part of. You can go to holycoaching.net/journey and see more details there in terms of a form you can use to help track some of your progress, etc. You can, of course, always send me your questions. I welcome them at trig@holycoaching.net. Until next time, be informed, be empowered, be accountable. Much love, family.